could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello, everyone. Today we're meeting Cartwright Morris. He's a leadership coach and also a podcast host at Men Are Forged podcast. Hello, Cartwright. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be here, Anna. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So let's start our conversation with diving into your journey of becoming the person you are today. So just let us know, what was the turning point for you to realize your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
Well, yeah, I would say mid-20s, 26 years old. I was, everyone from the outside could say I was having, I had a pretty normal, nice life. I had friends, a level of community. I had a job that was decently paying, house, car. But there was just something in me that was just stirring. That was, man, there's something I want that was pulling me in a different direction, that I was wanting to be more excited. And I woke up one day feeling very depressed, and life was feeling low. And I'd realized that at this point, fear had become such a dictator, a lot of ways, I like to say, in my life, where it dictated a lot of my decisions, a lot of how I operated, it was like this big monster in the room that I just constantly avoided and moved around until I was willing to really hit it head on and start taking risk and going after it. It's when it led to really the growth I was looking for. And so I moved to, I was living in my hometown, Birmingham, Alabama, moved back there. I really didn't want to move back there, but I did. And 6 months into this job, I just decided, you know what, I got to have a big change. And so I literally moved out west to Northern California, worked on this guest ranch venture, working maintenance for free, I was 26, working with a bunch of college students. And I'd never been happier. No one knew me from Adam. They literally just accepted me for who I was, not who, my parents were, or how much money I made, or all these things where you feel like you walk around as a mid-20-year-old that everybody's looking at you in a constant criticism, feedback, judgment, and you're living your life through other people's eyes. And so I was started at that journey as really hitting that head on of like, I got to figure out what's in here and lead that way, not constantly living according to what I think other people are thinking about me. And so that really was a turning point in being around a bunch of people who didn't know me, and really just showing up and saying, here's me, take it or leave it. And I found out I was really likable, lovable. I had talents. I started seeing my own self in a new light. And that's really when I started really on this journey of self-discovery and realized I had a lot to give others, more than I thought. I really had put myself on this low level of, this is who you have to be. This is your only contribution to society, to people, to humanity, and realize, like, no, I have a skill set. I have a presence that really can add value to others. And so that was around, wow, it was 2011. So that was 12 years ago. And that year was such a powerful year just in my life, being around people that saw me differently. Because I think that's the end of the day, when you don't see yourself, that self-worth, sometimes just getting around the right people to really pull that out of you. And then you can start being that self-driver in that. So that was my story, my turning point.
Yes, and I see you went through a lot of self-discovery, and actually, like you mentioned, that very important factor where we looking at ourselves through our own ways of, like kind of criticizing, judging ourselves. And if we don't have any self-compassion or love or believing in our own skills and abilities, that's what the most important driver for success. It's not other people's opinion about you. That doesn't matter. But a lot of times we identify ourselves with what people would say or how they, react towards your kind of presence. And we put ourselves down. So we start, talking with ourselves in a negative manner. And that actually leads to other mental health conditions, like you mentioned, depression, or some people anxiety. And that's very hard to break that cycle. So we need to become self-aware in order to see what kind of thoughts I would entertain on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I think it all starts with us being mindful. What would you think, some kind of practices that people could incorporate in a daily basis as maybe some habits that they could start doing that will help them to kind of see what those thoughts are and be able to identify them and kind of separate them from what the truth is?
Right. Well, that's, a lot of what I take my clients through is really just, behavior modification can only go so far. And you really have to have a mindset change. And, for me, one of the things that I really grew is I would put myself in a social situation where I would feel the need, that place where I'd step outside myself to perform, to get this person's, acceptance, pleasure, delight, or whatever. And you realize, you go from different people and they all have different responses, mannerisms. And the more I'm in my work, you realize just people are complex in general. There's not a consistency, just personality, background. There's so many different things that people, and so, but I base so much of my identity off of that, not realizing that. So I starting to realize that I was like, I'm going to be me and see and put it out there. And if it's not received, I'm going to sit in that discomfort and find out why. Was it what I said? Was it them? And you kind of start going through that practice of you know what? They just could be having a bad day. They could be, experiencing some disappointment, or you know what? Some people just, what do they call it? Just resting face. They just have a bad face or something. And you just gotta just bring myself to the table, and that's good enough. Start there. And you start realizing it is actually more than good enough. But starting with that self-talk of okay, I'm going to be me in this presence. And then when you have that mindset, you then can take feedback to the behavior, and it's just feedback. You don't take it personally. You don't take it to heart where it begins to crush you. Because anytime because in that old mindset, I would take feedback on my behavior and it would crush me. And then I would recoil and be more fearful and be more self-conscious and navel gazing and and my self-worth would be hurt. But then the more I really present myself and said, hey, this is me, I could then take feedback behavior oh yeah, I probably should keep my voice down in this situation. I probably shouldn't have made that joke around this specific person, or I probably should go own this mistake that I made, not because I'm a horrible person and I need to not be a horrible person. I'm just you know what? I need to own it because I want to be in this relationship with this person, or I want this person to know my heart's intention was actually for them. I just did a poor job in representation. So you really can start really acting when you start really facing those mindsets and start with quality self-talk and you really won't know until you actually do it in real scenarios that you're fearful in. And I think that's when we hit that head on. That's when you got to do it. Cause sometimes we get in our own silos and oh, I could be comfortable and safe over here, but you don't grow. You don't really hit those mindsets and those behaviors head on.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And actually being in your own truth, being authentic all the time, that's important, because a lot of times we put those masks and playing different roles, and again we start thinking about who we are as if we are that type of professional, that role, but we don't understand who we are in our core being, and also like you mentioned, other people opinions of you or your interaction with other people could be challenging, and you can feel discomfort in a lot of times, but you have to kind of like separate yourself from that situation that is happening, right? It's not about you. It's not because you're a bad person or you did something wrong. It could be different scenario where like another person that you're interacting with may be having a bad day, or it's usually like, a lot of times people, when they kind of like snap at you, it's because they are going through something, like they have some kind of issues they need to work on, and you just reflecting that back to them. And you then take it personally thinking it's you, but in reality it's not. So you have to understand that and not take it personally, and just kind of like let it be and reflect on it and see for what it is, and maybe eventually you will see the answer. Just give yourself space and not react, because a lot of times people in that reactive mode, and in the moment they could say something or do something that they will regret later on, because we always, if you in that mode that you kind of like triggered, and again it could be something within you that's been triggered with that situation, but you don't realize it. So that's why this practice of being mindful, it's important for you to kind of like take control over your own behavior, because it all starts with your thinking first. So you have to kind of be willing to look into what exactly are you thinking about and how are you feeling while you're thinking about that, right? Is that the thought that really like benefits you? Because if you start taking responsibility of your own life, that you are the one created everything that you have right now. And if you're not satisfied with what you have, you're the one who can change it as well. So from that point, I think you will feel power back, and then you can move forward with your life. And I know that you are coaching a lot of high performance and performance into being the leaders in their personal and professional life. And I'd like you to talk more about what is exactly like leadership kind of skills, and a true leader, what skills that person should possess in order to be an example for others.
I mean, I think the big thing is just the ability to be present. I mean, that is I know every leader I've want to follow, they're not looking past me. They're not trying to just get to the next thing constantly. I think high performers, there's definitely like, hey, let's get stuff done. Let's make it happen. Let's keep moving the ball forward. But when it comes to the people around them, like I want to bring others with me, and I want to reproduce success in them. It's not just about me and my ego in creating success for me and making more money. It's more about us getting that ball. And I think that's the quality of a great leader, and it starts with being present at meetings, being present in conflict, being present, when it comes to problem solving, creating solutions. And that comes with and that's what I deal with a lot of leaders. I start with the man, the leader, before really getting to his leadership in whatever business, because I think all great leaders have had that ability to reflect on their day, on their life, on good, bad situations, and they've learned how to manage their emotions. I mean, that's something, Anna, that you made me think about just now was, I walked around really trying to manage other people's emotions, and therefore I didn't learn how to manage my own. It's like that is a recipe for disaster. And I think leaders do that in one way or the other, right? Either they don't care about anybody, over swinging, or they're constantly making sure everybody's okay. And, I'm not okay unless you're okay. And both of them don't actually create long-term success. It doesn't produce things that's really going to leave a legacy and add value to others. And so I think leaders starting there, learning how to reflect on things, the ability, and you start doing it faster when you experience something. You're in a meeting and somebody says something you don't like. A lot of narcissism, egotistical is to then deflect, throw something off, blame a circumstance, blame somebody else. But the ability to go, okay, I need to own about 60% of that. I need to then delegate that to somebody else, or I need to actually learn to talk through and let's figure out more solution. Like the ability to reflect starts with starting to personally do that well as leaders, because then you can then reproduce it in a team, in building something and pushing forward an idea. Because it's like, man, we're just getting in the place where we're being led by very talented people, even very people with great vision, but they're not high in character. They're not high in integrity. They're not high in people skills, unfortunately. And I think there is especially the younger generation, they're wanting to be led well. They're wanting to be led in a place that they're seeing, being seen in the workplace, and they'll actually work harder for somebody that, that really sees them, that really values them and their skill set. And so I'm trying to really get to that place where I'm developing a lot of these young leaders and them stepping into that place where they have the ability to take care of themselves. So then therefore they have a lot to give, because those who have that deficit tend to, act poorly out of it.
Yes, and I agree with you. And also, we have to realize our job is to work on ourselves and ourselves only, right? We're not responsible to any other person around you. Even, like when you're in a relationship and, romantic, professional relationship, any type of interaction with other people, they are responsible for what they're thinking and how they're behaving, and you're responsible for yourself. And you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be willing to look into, yourself deep enough to face all those fears, insecurities, worries, anxieties, and heal and, get to that place where you can be a service of others. You have to cultivate those skills within you. And that's your responsibility, because a lot of times we try, to kind of find a reason why we're not doing something, come up with different excuses. But in the end of the day, it's just you kind of procrastinating or, escaping present moment. And that's where your power is here now. And you have to be able to find a way to be present, because this is how you can work on yourself. And it then reflects into your personal and professional life. And then you will see how everything else will change around you. And all of us been given certain gifts and talents when we were born. So we actually have our unique gifts to share with others. But a lot of times we don't see them because we're so, again, judgmental about ourselves, and we don't see our own value in this society, or what can we give back. And I think we should also start with kind of be grateful for what we have right now. And a lot of times we just don't see, but we've been given a lot of tools and opportunities to kind of work on ourselves and move forward. But we choosing to spend our time differently, and that's why we don't see any results. But if we discipline ourselves, if we have that time scheduled for our own self-care every single day, and that would eventually, grow into something that you can be a different person a year from today. But again, it takes a decision. If you're ready, if you're willing, you have to commit. You have to be consistent with your actions and showing yourself that, you care about yourself.
Yes.
So a lot of times we think somebody else is supposed to care about us, but it's usually, it starts within ourselves. It has to be feeling that I'm important, that I have something to give, and I should give myself more time to kind of heal or go through some kind of issues, because once I'm better, then from that place, I can grow more, I can give more. And I just want to know your thoughts on, so how would you, advise people to kind of start cultivating that self-compassion, self-care, self-love in terms of certain habits that they could do every single day, or maybe certain actions that will help them to start thinking about it and knowing that it's important to dedicate time daily to check in with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the obvious thing is man, we got to find things that we just have a blast doing. I think that when it comes to self-care and really loving yourself, I think, God, it's just hard to be depressed. It's hard to be anxious. It's hard to be down on yourself when you're just laughing and having a blast. So I think discovering that, I mean, me and my wife, we just love to laugh together. I love getting on a mountain bike and just flying down a mountain, like doing stuff like that. That is self-care, especially, I mean, I think fitness and health is such a valuable thing because just our body responds to that. So that's one thing is, I think obviously taking care of yourself physically can be, but yeah, I think it's always just like, especially those harder moments. I think you gotta, the best part of self-care, I think, is taking that risk, that thing you keep avoiding, you shouldn't, and approaching it with some self-talk that I am worthy of this, that I do enjoy doing these things, that why am I holding back, and learning that self-talk amidst of the uncomfortable, the discomfort. I would say a lot of times when I started facing fears in my life, I really found breakthrough. I found passion. I found joy on the other side of it when I was willing to hit it head on.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that thing you're afraid of, that's the practice, those little things, whether that's, it could be as big as starting your own business, or that could be as little as, confronting a relationship. That could be, I shouldn't say that's a little thing, that's a big thing. Or that's just, or changing your diet, or it's just these little things that we're afraid of and we keep avoiding and walking around like avoidance. It just doesn't lead to a healthy, full life. I think learning to address this, that's why, I use my podcast. It's called, Men Are Forged. And for the ladies out there, I like to say that I'm a bridge builder, but to build a bridge, you got to start on your side. So that's why I call it for men. It's for, I want men to be better servants and lovers and carers and leaders. And so I especially for women, because I want to see women thrive, but men, we got to start on our side. So I say for Men Are Forged, and that's that mindset. At the end of the day, everything that happens in life is for a reason. You're being shaped and molded for something to add, and it's not just for you; it's to add value to others. And so that's the mindset, because the alternative is selfishness, laziness, really anxiety. That's kind of like where, and I think I've lived that life, that route, and it's been not a life I want to live anymore. And this life where I feel there is something being shaped and molded through everything that happens, the good and the bad, the disappointments, the failures. It's all being shaped where I'm continuing to figure out more about myself, more about my value to others, and hopefully live a life that I look back and I've just loved it. And I just absolutely feel celebrated and excited, and I gave something back. So
Right. And also, like you mentioned, it's important to understand that everything is happening for you. All of those events, opportunities in your life, it's for your own and for the better good of all of us, right? So sometimes it's challenging when you're in the moment. Maybe it feels like, like you in kind of discomfort, or you're scared of something, but you have to face that issue at hand in order to kind of like go over it. So to let it go and to learn from it. Also, you don't have to get stuck in your head thinking about the past. A lot of times people go through certain events and they very kind of like attached to them, and it brings them negative emotions while they keep thinking about it. But it actually, you kind of like, it hinders your progress. So you have to let it go. And because that's what you're doing for yourself. That's another, like form of self-care, when you let yourself heal, and you have to process that emotions, because sometimes like people avoid going back and processing that emotion. But once they do, maybe it could feel like a little painful in the moment, but once you do, it's just, it releases power over you. And over time, you're not really triggered by it. And then once it's gone, you feel free, like you feel that the weight was lifted from your chest, and now you are in a different space, and maybe it was something for you to learn from that experience, and it shaped you to a different person. So you have to be grateful for all of those opportunities that you have on a daily basis, and kind of approach them with a different mindset, knowing that it's in a bigger picture, everything is for you, and it helps you to grow. And there's nothing to be scared of, but rather be courageous enough to face it and to learn from it and to grow and to become a better version of you, because then you can be that person who can lead others by example, or who can give back to humanity in some kind of way. And that is important to point out. And I think, with all of the distraction today, social media and like TV, everything is kind of like taking our focus away from what matters. And it's our job, again, it comes back to your responsibility to find that time to schedule, every day what is important to you and how you can grow more. Because if you continue compare yourself to others, you won't be able to move forward. You have to continue yourself with your past self. Did you make any progress? Because I feel like the scariest place to be is to be in the same place a year from today. That is scary.
Oh, yes.
I
mean, that was part of a lot of my decision start my own business was I could be fine doing what I was doing, but I was like, I'll be in the same place 5 years from now if I don't do it, so.
Yeah, like you have to understand that your actions today matter, and that what will, compound over time and, kind of like bring you in a different place a year, 5 years from today. And sometimes we underestimate what could be done within a year, we think like it doesn't matter, it's not important. But I feel like it's all of those negative kind of like thoughts that's coming in, that they always like on repeat. And again, like if you don't recognize that this is not beneficial for you, because sometimes you hear like you have to relax, you have to, procrastinate, like delay things, but this is not what you want to do. It's not good for you. And that's why we have to, again, like become mindful and kind of like catch those thoughts that coming in, and separate ourselves from them, and kind of like understand that we are the ones who can choose what we can focus on. And again, if we're responsible for our life, we can change at any point with us making a decision right now. I just want to ask you, like, what would you think you would advise your past self? So let's go back like 5 years before we met today, right? And do you remember yourself and how you were, your mindset? And now you look at yourself now, right? And for those who, still undecided, scared, and they don't know where to start, like, what would you advise your past self, that person who may be a little scared in some kind of way? What would you say to him in order to motivate him? Because now you know where you're at.
Yeah. I would say the thing you're scared of, it's not as bad as you think. I would say get excited about it, because you're going to learn. You may not, the thing is we have such a false sense of security in so many things, whether that's money, a job, even certain relationships, and you find out really how tough you are when you really do face those fears. And you find out it's like, that wasn't as bad as I thought, but I
Mhm.
wouldn't have known if I didn't have just tried it. And so that's what I would say to myself. I think there's probably a lot I'd say. But it's just, you just lose perspective sometimes when you're in it. Um, it's fascinating because you think about, I mean, some of the stuff I struggled with, even just my own anxieties and depression, even is, and this is hit or miss because I advise my client, like, don't ever take medication if it makes you less of yourself.
Mhm.
And that's something I started taking a couple years ago. Was just I just felt this chemical imbalance. It would happen,
Mhm.
it was one of those things where I had all the mental health tools, and I started heading in a certain direction, and I'd be great for a month, and then had this big dip, and it would come out of nowhere. And sometimes we have these little chemical, and I think sometimes whatever it's as men, we're too tough to take that kind of stuff. But it's like whatever kind of brings out more of yourself, that helps manage more of your thoughts and emotions in a way that's healthy for others and for yourself. I think you gotta willing to address that. Do whatever it takes to really be emotionally and mentally healthy, and really and research and look at it and find out what's the best choice. I got a counselor 5 years ago, and that was exactly what I needed. I needed and that's what I feel in my job is I know these leaders are siloed in their own place, and they're processing thoughts, and they're only getting more anxiety, poor solutions, and the people around them are flailing, and they therefore become more fearful and more hurt. And and just like, you need a place just to vent, to process, and then understand and collect those thoughts and go, okay, this ain't that bad. Let's keep moving forward, and sometimes we just need that place just to, I would say, and so therefore I would say find people, whether you already have that in your relationships. That was something that really attracted me about my wife, is she had that in her friendships, and people closest to her was the safe place to talk, safe place to open up. And if I could change my answer, that's probably what I'd say is find a safe place to talk. And sometimes you have to pay for it. You gotta go find a counselor or a coach.
Mhm.
Um, and for men, unfortunately, that's more common. I would say that from my perspective and experience, and women tend to do that within their friendship as they provide that. But at the end of the day, yeah, like I think that's such a value, is find that safe place where you can process and understand your thoughts and emotions in a healthy way, because we can't do it on our own. So,
Yeah, it's actually impossible to do on our own, because if you're already at that point when you struggle, that means you couldn't deal with them, all of those type of thoughts and emotion, and you need that outside counsel or a coach or somebody who can hold like this safe space for you and not be judgmental, is just to listen to you, and you will see that different perspective on your own thoughts, and it could give you an insight and understanding of what's really bothering you, and it will help you heal and again like let it go. Because in the end of the day, this is what is important. You have to prioritize your mental health, because start working on yourself is a sign of strength, not sign of weakness. Because a lot of
mm,
people mistaken by thinking about it as a weakness, especially men asking for help and asking for a counsel, or
mm-hmm,
psychiatrist or anybody who could help them, or a coach. They would think it's hard to kind of open up and to be vulnerable and to share, because maybe they think, well, they will be judged, It could be different reasoning behind it, but we have to understand that, in that kind of relationship, it's just meant for you to be honest, to be open, and not to worry about people judging you, because they won't. They will just help you to go through those type of issues, and they will help you to heal. And with you making a decision to work on your mental, emotional health, and it's the best thing you can do, actually, because that investment in your personal growth, that's the best return that you're gonna get.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, in every area of your life, you'll see fruit from it. It's amazing. And but you know what's interesting? You made me think of this is a common theme, especially in my first couple sessions with my clients, is I'll get, oh man, I bet you think I'm all over the place, or I bet you think I'm crazy. And what it is this core belief that I'm the only one struggling with this. And it's not true. And that's what happens when we actually voice it and process with others. Realize like, oh, we're not alone in this. This is a common human thing that I'm dealing with, whatever decision I'm struggling with, and we get in a group or we get in a place with one-on-one and we realize like, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not insane. I think that is a powerful thing. So
yeah, and like when you see that other people are also experiencing the same thing as you don't feel as kind of separated. You don't continue judging yourself, because you usually, like, we exaggerate those type of feelings or thoughts, thinking like we're the only ones and nobody would understand us, and this is such a horrible thing. How can I even talk about it, right? But once you start really opening up and seeing for what it is, you see, how could I let this taking over my mind? Like you would see it from a different perspective, and now you will be ready to let it go. But you have to get it out in some kind of way. You have to start talking. And again, it's your decision. Either you continue to let it kind of like eat you up day by day, because if you're not gonna face it, it's not gonna go away. That's the thing with all those type of addictions that people have. They kind of escape, trying to process that emotional and deal with that. But that's it's not healthy way to deal with them. But actually you have to face it, and you have to maybe become uncomfortable for some temporary period of time, but eventually it will be better. Eventually you will start feeling better and you will change.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. So good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we talked about it today. And how people can find you on social media, for those who would like to learn more about your coaching program and your podcast.
Yeah, so I recommend following me, or even reaching out on LinkedIn, Cartwright Morris. I mean, that's generally where I share a lot of content about what I'm doing and how I do it. But as well as, find out more information on the podcast, it's MentorForge. You can go to mentorforge.com, or you can even go to MentorForge at Instagram or YouTube, and you find a lot of the videos. I have a lot of shorts where you can get us just sample size from the podcast. And, obviously it's on Apple and Spotify. So.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, and we'll be in touch. Hope you enjoy your day.
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.